Thanks, everybody. Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri. You loved our next guest in Good Girls Revolt, Backstrom, and The Upside, and now you can see Genevieve Angelson on the fantastic new show, Flack, where she plays the sister of a flailing mess of a publicist, played by Anna Paquin. Let's take a look. Everybody, please welcome Genevieve Angelson. Hey.
Hi.
Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Good to see you again. I believe last time you were here was for Good Girls Revolt with the whole cast of that wonderful show that you were part of.
Yeah.
Flack. Unbelievable.
I love this show so much.
So good.
You know, the funny thing is, Good Girls Revolt, clearly a feminist show about women's empowerment. And I so loved doing that. Nothing will ever be quite like that show to me. But the thing about this one that's so special is that that one was so specifically geared towards an audience that would be interested in that kind of content and seek that out. And what I love about Flack is that it actually really is a feminist show without sort of announcing itself as such. And so therefore it can reach people who aren't necessarily looking for that. I mean, it's a group of women in the ensemble, and some of the speeches are just so unbelievably rooted in like rigorous feminist ideals. And so in that way, it's kind of like, well, we should get that in all of our content. It shouldn't be a special interest kind of content. It's
unapologetic in its feminism, while at the same time it isn't trying to preach or sort of like wear those ideas on its sleeve. It just is that thing.
Right.
And it's not that Good Girls Revolt was like that, but because of the time that I think it was set in, those characters had to announce themselves so much.
Well, it's just what the show was about. It was about a lawsuit to, sue a magazine for gender discrimination. And that's just not what this is about. This show is not preachy. If anything, it's like, just, don't make your cocaine use too public. Just
how we were talking about this in the green room. This is very much a British comedy. The jokes are, as fast as possible. Cram as many jokes into a scene as you possibly can. What is it like getting to do scenes like that?
Oh my gosh. It is, well, first of all, it's so personal to me because I lived in London until I was 10. And so I grew up with that pace and those sounds and that kind of frenetic comedy. Like, to me, that's the golden standard. So to be able to do a British comedy was the dream, and I have now ticked that off the list.
Was that something that you had told your agents or whatever before this? Like, I really want to do a British comedy. If one comes up,
it's so
please
funny.
Get me out there.
I don't even know if I knew to dream it because I just thought oh, well, I'm not British, so why would I get to do it? And then all of a sudden, I'm the only American on this show. I mean, Anna plays an American, but she is in fact New Zealand, Canada. Her husband is British. She can do anything. So it was sort of just like getting divinely selected to be in this British comedy was so exciting for me. And then what was the second part of your question? Sorry. Oh. No. What
I was just gonna say, this show is really dark, and I think Good Girls Revolt was fairly dark at times as well. And I saw you in this play last night, The Cake, which explores fairly serious themes. And you are an extremely sweet, smiley, bubbly person, and I mean that as a compliment. Do you have a kind of darkness side? Like, when you go watch your content for yourself, movies, TV, is it generally fairly dark skewing?
I think that comedians are the darkest people alive. I think that I would say I don't know how to put this exactly at 11 a.m. I did 2 shows yesterday, so it's sort of
like one of them.
It's like Actors 7 a.m. right now. I'm super dark. I'm the darkest. What are you saying?
I was just curious. Like, when you have time off to listen to something, a podcast, or to watch a movie.
It's a comedy podcast.
It's a comedy podcast.
But to me, that's because life is so hard. Yeah. Life is impossibly difficult. I don't know how people make it through the hours of 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. every day. I find afternoons to be a challenge, and they happen daily. I honestly find the act of living and breathing to be just the most humbling.
Agree.
Okay, so lightness to me is the greatest gift. Yeah. And comedy to me is the hardest frontier. And so to be able to do something like Flack that is the darkest of subjects, it's about addiction, it's about being let down by your family, it's about
mental illness in a lot of ways.
Mental illness, the wounds of your childhood. To be able to take that content and make it funny and talk about bukkake is like, I love that nothing is off limits. I love insisting upon the lightness in the darkest situations. I'm incredibly drawn to that. Oh, you know what you asked me about? You asked me about British comedy and what it was like tackling that. And the funniest thing is the hardest, I think it's in the episode that will air tonight, the hardest scene that I had to do.
Which is the second episode, right?
Second episode was Ollie Lansley wrote into his second episode a song that I think a lot of American kids learn in school. I didn't learn this. I wasn't in America at the time. The song about the 50 states. Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas. Just memorizing that song of all the states was 3 days of my life. I mean, it was mind-bogglingly difficult. I don't know how kids do it.
That's incredible, because last night I saw you perform an amazing monologue. It was really my favorite moment of the play, which is this beautiful monologue that you have about a dream that you have growing up, and a young man descends from the ceiling. Basically, it's this entire monologue about sexuality and about how your character felt as a child growing up, dealing with feelings of lesbianism while at the same time being raised very religiously.
Yeah.
An incredible monologue. How long did it take you to memorize that?
A really long time, actually. The funny thing about Bekah Brunstetter, who's the playwright of this play at Manhattan Theater Club, The Cake, is she writes in a style that is so true to life that she writes in very deliberately ums and uhs and dashes and commas and periods, and none of them are an accident, and it's important that you get them just right, or you'll miss a thought that she's trying to convey, or an attitude about a certain experience that she's trying to convey. So that was really challenging. Right. But I'm so glad that monologue spoke to you. It's about, as you said, it's about growing up as a lesbian, not even knowing what lesbians are, and trying to understand, and having nobody ever have a sex talk with you, and trying to understand what sex is, and coming up with this fantasy that is so, at first, absurd, and then really horrible, because the idea of being forced to have a kind of sex you don't want to have, I think, ultimately, to her, trying to force that attraction feels like sex against her will.
Yeah, what I loved about that monologue is that so much of what you just said sort of wasn't said within it. It was mostly about the imagery, and it was about the metaphor, and none of it was like her going like, I used to have this dream about when I thought of sex. You know, that stuff was all kind of removed, and it became this very like abstract, beautiful piece of the play in an otherwise natural play, you know?
It's so nice of you to say, delivering a monologue about a fantasy is really difficult to do because it's really hard to activate. Everybody, all of my friends know about me that the easiest way to make me mad at you, or at least to just tune out, is to say, oh my God, I have to tell you about this dream I had last night.
Fuck that.
I'm like, no,
Yeah.
we're done. Oh, can we say fuck?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm thrilled. Fuck that.
Yeah.
I just, like, honestly, talking about your dreams is conversation hijack. I mean, it's
the worst.
taking prisoners. It's boring. It didn't happen. It doesn't make sense. How dare you? So for me to be able to deliver a monologue about a fantasy that I had as a kid that's like a couple paragraphs long and be able to hold people's attention, it's like, how do you activate that? And I think the best way to do it is like, we all have really weird things that we thought about sex when we were kids, right? I know what mine are, and to be able to tell someone in your life who's really religious and really important to you, and a mother figure, the very specifics about what this fantasy were for you, it has to be as difficult to do as it is so urgent that you tell her. And for me, finding that has been one of the most exciting acting challenges of the play.
Was that something, when you say finding that, is that something where like for the first, weeks of rehearsals, you would go in and as you were getting up to that moment and having to do that, you would just be like, fuck, how do I find a way into this so that it feels, because so often when people talk about acting, and I think if you don't act, you don't understand that an actor has to feel comfortable with what they're saying, and that is like this very instinctual finding a way, and it's hard to articulate because it's just about making sure you don't feel that sort of like nervous, embarrassing pit in your stomach while you're saying something. You feel natural while doing it.
I know what you mean. And if you don't have it, you really end up with this feeling of having egg on your face of like, I'm standing in front of these people every night and I don't really know why I'm saying what I'm saying. I'm grateful I don't feel that, because this is where having training and having craft really comes in handy. So you see a speech that doesn't have any instructions next to it of like, this is how you deliver it so that it's interesting. You know what I mean? And for me, the first question is like, what are the stakes? What is there to lose here? Why is it that I have to say this now? If I don't say this now, what will happen to me? And for me, it has to be completely rooted in the person that I'm talking to. So if this person I'm talking to doesn't approve of me being a lesbian, I'm not going to be able to approve of myself. I'm going to live my life in shame. I might lose her, and she's basically the person on the planet who means the most to me. So you want to try and make the choice that makes what you're saying so vital that you have to say it then. And if you can find that, you can kind of say anything. But especially in a longer story. And then, of course, I think there's the thing of like, when you're at the beginning of a monologue, you can't anticipate that it's going to be a monologue, right? It's like, I'm just going to say the first thing I have to say. And then based on the reaction I get from the other person, which I guess is silence, then I keep talking. And then I keep talking.
And so much of stage acting, excuse me, I'm not an actor, so I don't totally know, but like so much of stage acting is you rehearse so that you can create sense memory. So like you get on the stage and those words can kind of just come from you without having to really pull them out at a certain point.
Oh, I know what you mean, but I so don't do that.
Amazing.
I hope that's not bad to say. Well, no, just because I often find that like my when I go into autopilot, I'm just real bad. I'm just like, I'm not good. So
you're still working and pulling that stuff out as much as
I try to be. I think it's the most, somebody paid for that ticket. And I'm trying to give you something that day that's happening that day that's never happened before. Okay, that's like a pretty high goal. You know what I mean? That doesn't always happen.
Oh, also, excuse me, I didn't mean that like you go on autopilot or actors go on autopilot.
I know you didn't mean that. I just mean, it's just so funny because I feel like so often my work in this play is like, how do I forget the way that I have been saying this for the I'm so sick of my own voice, and like, this person doesn't have any memory of the way that she said this yesterday. And like, this doesn't even mean, what do these words even mean anymore? Oh, you're saying something important. Say it for the first time. It doesn't have to sound, it's like a song you get stuck in your head that you have to just get rid of. And it's a gift when it comes out completely differently,
When you go into doing a scene in Flack or a scene in television, which is much more direct and very quick, right? I mean, I know that Bekah
Brunstetter.
Bekah Brunstetter, the writer of The Cake, is also a television writer and a producer, so she knows how to get those stakes. But when you go into Flack, the scenes are shorter, the stakes are much clearer right away. Do you still have to do that work that you talk about in terms of finding the material, finding what the stakes, asking those questions?
Oh my God, you know what's so funny, especially about the clip that you just showed? They're in most of the episodes, I think, of Flack, there is a scene where Anna and I are in a split screen on a phone call.
Also, this show does split screens in a way that I haven't actually seen shows do. The frame
An
shots.
annoying, really difficult way for the actor.
Maybe for the actor, for the viewer,
not for
I
the
love
viewer.
it.
It's awesome. For the actor, it's so hard.
Because nobody ever does split screens a different way. They're always the same. And so to watch a show that at least just took 1 minute to go, maybe we should try a little different thing with this visual language and do it, I was excited by that. I was happy with it.
That's so nice of you to say. This is what it actually entailed. It's like, if any good acting comes out of those phone calls, it is such an act of God. Like, it's such an accident because, okay, so in the first episode, if anybody at home has seen that one yet, there's a phone call where I am talking on the phone with my sister. I am making dinner for my kid and talking to my kid. So there's like 7 things going on at once. And then as the actor, what's actually happening is Anna's already shot her scene. So I'm going off of a recording of when she said her lines, and there's no cut in the camera. So all I'm trying to do is speak at the right pace so that I can fill the silence in between Anna's lines. It is actually just an exercise in like drumming. Do you know what I mean? And then it's like, okay, pick up the chicken nugget from out of the thing, and now get the little thing off of the daughter. I'm such a sense memory actor. I'm so real. That child actor, get the thing off of her face.
Its face.
Now it's talking.
Yeah.
You know, it was super hard. So if I was at all connected to like the reality of the scene, it was an accident.
How is it working with Anna? She's an executive producer of the show as well. She developed the material with the writer. I mean, she's really, she's number 1 on the call sheet. It's her show.
Anna Paquin. This is, I mean, she a cuckoo bird, but she is the greatest. I don't know if anybody at home has seen this, but Page Six recently ran an interview. I thought I was one of like 5 people doing an interview about Flack from the show to kind of talk about, what it's going to be about and why people should watch it. Page Six ran an interview entitled like Genevieve Angelson and her deep connection with Anna Paquin or something like that. The whole interview is just about my feelings for Anna. Like, this was Page Six news. When we met, it was so instantaneous. And just the fact of how we work together happened to like go incredibly well. But I mean, we look similar. Like, we were sisters right away. We have a lot of the same crazy, she and I, and it's really compatible. It's like really compatible in a family way. And
what's an example of your crazy?
I couldn't possibly betray her like that.
Well, that's why I said you're crazy, not necessarily her crazy.
I couldn't possibly betray
Fair.
myself like that. No. I think that we both react to terror in the same way. We're both smart, and we're both like have our own control issues, and so we want to be the person who's picking up the hot chicken nugget and wiping the kid's mouth and on the phone, and it's like we want to run the show and be involved in every decision, and I just get her, and I feel like she just got me right away, and we didn't there's some instances where like, you got to spend time together to try and build a familial kind of chemistry, and we didn't have to do that. We ultimately did it anyway because we really liked each other, but like it was just sort of there.
Yeah, if you can't, I don't know, I feel like if you can't build that chemistry pretty instantaneously, it's going to be hard.
It was super hard.
Build.
There was this one scene on Good Girls Revolt that actually got cut, and 1 or 2 scenes, I think. And it was during an episode where my character went home to visit her family in New Jersey, and it was just such a tall order that like on the day, and I don't know if this is why they cut it. I think it actually just wasn't sort of an economic way of telling the story, but that like on the day I meet my mom and dad and siblings, and we're sitting at a dinner table having dinner. You have no idea like how much actually has to go into that in order for it to be convincing. Because at a person's dinner table, that's the belly of the beast with your family. That's where like all the inside jokes, all of the buttons that get pushed, all of that stuff, that's when it sparks and flies at like the speed of light, and
there's a lot you have to articulate.
That's right.
Very quickly.
And for 6 strangers who just met on the day that they are shooting, when they maybe cross paths in the makeup trailer, it's like the hardest thing in the world to create.
And that's one of those moments, and this is I don't know who wrote that episode or anything, but the writing has to carry that as much as possible.
Yeah.
Those actors haven't met each other. The writing has to be very articulate and very clear as to their backstory very quickly.
Yeah.
To at the very least help the actors kind of push that.
Well, I'm sure the writing was great and we did a great job, but it was hard. It was really, really hard. And it was really easy with Anna.
Yeah. Maybe do the two of you feel like share a sensibility?
Yeah. Which is weird because she like won an Oscar when she was 11, and I was like, I don't know what I was doing when I was 11.
She told me in her private time she listens to murder podcasts.
Cool.
Serial killer podcasts, and in your private time you listen to comedy podcasts.
Well, but she dark. She darker than me. She darker than I am. Yeah. Oh my God, Anna. She is just a panic. She's just a total panic. I just love her.
I think we have one question from the audience. Who has a question? You right here, walking towards. I'll fill the time.
Hi. We have a question from our website. One of your fans wants to know what's been your favorite scene of Flack to film?
Oh, my favorite scene of Flack to film. Oh, I know. It's on the episode it's episode 3, airs next week, and it was actually the first thing that we shot, and it was it was set in a nightclub without giving too much away, and we spent the entire week shooting in a nightclub. Me, Anna, Lydia Wilson, and Mark Warren, who are 2 other actors on the show, and we just, without any booze or any music, just like that beat that they play underneath so that all the actors are kind of dancing in the same rhythm without there being any sound, had to pretend we were totally wasted out of our minds for a week, and it was probably the most fun I've ever had shooting anything. I just have to say, I just got a little bit distracted for a second because here at AOL Build, at the Build series, there are all of these security guards, and they're all dressed like so chic. I don't know if you can get a shot of this on the camera, but there's like sunglasses inside, there's like high collars and like black scarves, and who's your stylist? Hey, what's up? Okay, we'll talk later. Okay.
We have a question from Twitter. The question is, do you like performing on stage or in film, TV more?
What do I like more? It depends on when in my life you catch me. So like sometimes I feel like I'm sort of more of a teamster in a van, and that's when I like doing TV. And sometimes I feel more like I just need to be in the room with other people whose hearts are beating and are sweating and have flesh, and we're sharing the same oxygen, and that's when I like doing theater. But people ask me a lot, like, what's the difference between acting on film and acting on stage? And talk louder. Be louder so they can hear you. That's
and you have more time with the material on stage.
Yeah, but often you have as much time as you need with the material on camera. Not the case with Flack, which is a great show, but, TV, not always as good of the writing. Not always.
Yeah.
In this case, it is.
In Flack, it's really great.
In Flack, it is really great. And when I read it, I'm serious. And when I read it, I really did think, like, this could be a play. This is so smart, so funny.
Well, I said this, I think, to Anna, and I think I said it to you backstage, like, Flack is about a publicist, and based off of the trailers, it looks like, a flawed woman publicist kind of flailing around, and then the show starts, and it's insanely well written, and your characters are beautifully drawn, and there's jokes. It's just jam-packed with jokes and stakes, and it moves quickly, and it's incredible. It's never what you expect it to be, and it's the performances and the writing that really carry it. And I'm sure your directors are great and everything.
Get a second season of the show. Tune in. Set the DVR.
Oh, I have to say as well, before I let you go, with the cake, your costumes are so perfect for your character. You dress like a child in the whole play. Can you just briefly touch on that? When I was watching the play last night, I kept being like, they keep dressing her like a child.
Well, we have a great costume designer, and he and I worked together basically he just brought in a bunch of stuff. I looked at the rack and I was like, that, and that, because that looks like I'm going to my first day of kindergarten. And then like, as I also wanted to look like I lived in, like,
Straddling two worlds?
No, yeah, but also like, sure, I live in Cobble Hill in, a shoebox that I share with 4 other people, but it's Cobble Hill, like you could totally find me in Echo Park, or like, the play is set in North Carolina with me going home, so I also like want to get my nails done pink and like fit in and be able to code switch, and he was just really good at working with me that way. I don't know if you noticed this, but she comes a little bit more undone as the play goes on. And in the last scene, I just come in a sweatshirt because I wanted it to start with like more of a tight facade that just sort of, you know.
How much of that do you work with the director and writer on, or were you as the performer sort of left to figure out your costume with the designer?
Well, I was left to figure out the costume with my designer, but not without their approval. I mean, I think if they had disagreed, they would have said, no. But I think we were really all on the same page. Yeah.
Well, I love the play. Congratulations.
so
I love
much.
Flack. It's on tonight
Yeah.
on Pop at 10 p.m.
o'clock.
Thursday nights. And
Yeah.
the cake is at City Center, right?
New York City Center, produced by Manhattan Theater Club.
For how much longer?
It will run until March 31st.
Amazing. Everybody give Genevieve a huge round of applause. Let's hear it.
Thank you.